Good morning! You join me here at Dorridge Station on the Chiltern Main Line. Now the Mark III rail carriages are probably some of the most famous and most loved rail carriages on the whole of the British railway network, but their time, especially in England, is coming to an end. The Mark IIIs originally were introduced in the 1970s to work with the new HST Intercity 125 trains, which were powered by Class 43 diesel locomotives. Later in their life, the Mark IIIs worked nationwide with a host of different locomotives, not just HST sets. And wow, those numbers have sadly dwindled, and this is where we get to today, where just 2 operators in England now run the Mark IIIs. That's right, as of January of 2026, only Chiltern Railways and Great Western Railway operate the Mark III carriages, and only Chiltern Railways run daily normal passenger services. The Great Western Mark IIIs are now only used on the Night Riviera sleeper services. And that is all about to come to an end, for Chiltern anyway. In March 2026, the Mark IIIs are scheduled to be withdrawn from Chiltern Railway services. They currently operate several diagrams a day up from Marylebone towards Princess Risborough, Birmingham and Stourbridge, hauled by Class 68 diesel locomotives and also push-pulled by Mark III driving van trailers. But yes, from March, these silver sets, as they're known as, are being replaced by the Mark Vs, the former Transparent Express carriages, which are only around 8 or 9 years old. They're going to come in and replace the Mark IIIs and also provide a host of other benefits. In today's video, I'm going to be travelling up and down the Chiltern network from Birmingham down to Leamington Spa on the Mark III carriages, having one final ride on the Mark IIIs. I was also talking about the history of the Mark IIIs and their operations with Chiltern Railways and how we got to the stage where Chiltern are now the last daily operators of the Mark III coaches, bar the Night Riviera, but Chiltern are basically the last. ScotRail still have the Mark IIIs and they actually operate HSTs. They're the last operator in the UK to do so. Expect some HST videos in Scotland soon. But yes, for now I'm about to board a train heading towards Marylebone. We'll be getting off at Leamington. This will be a Chiltern Railways silver set. So I'm on the wrong platform, so I need to change platform and then go down to Leamington Spa on a silver set where we'll look at the history of the Mark IIIs. I'll see you there. Right, hello from Leamington Spa Station. Now here at Leamington I'm going to go through a little brief history of the Mark III carriages before they went to Chiltern. Now I got that 68 and that 5 carriage silver set down from Dorridge here to Leamington. Then I got half an hour wait, around half an hour until the next train northbound, which is another silver set. I don't know what locomotive it is, but yeah, another 68 set up towards Birmingham. And at Birmingham we can talk a little bit more about the silver sets and their operations with Wrexham and Shropshire and then Chiltern. So the Mark IIIs emerged in the late 1960s as a way to counter airlines and cars. In 1968 the decision was made by British Rail to create a new generation of standard railway coaches capable of speeds of 125 miles an hour. These were the 3rd generation of carriages that British Rail made, hence the Mark III, so the Mark Is and the Mark IIs previously. The Mark IIIs would be longer and capable of higher speeds than the Mark IIs, whilst also having airbag suspension, which would make it a smoother ride, and also being far more crash resistant than the Mark IIs, which was constructed from 1964 for less high-speed intercity long-distance services. The Mark IIIs would be 23 metres in length per carriage and were trialled from 1972 from the prototype HST. Of course, the Mark IIIs were most famous with the Intercity 125, the HST trains, which are capable of 125 miles an hour, of course, hence their name. And these Mark 3s were constructed for the HST and Intercity 125 programme. However, extra Mark 3s were constructed for more traditional loco-hauled services, and eventually they constructed a new type of train, the driving van trailer, which would allow services to negate the need for several locomotive shunting swaps, but we'll talk more about the DVT later. Then the Mark 3s were introduced by Intercity with 253 standard coaches built from 1975 to 1988. 208 sleeping coaches were also built from 1982. And there will be 3 batches to the normal standard coaches. These will be the Mark 3 HST coaches, which were built for the HSTs of course, the Mark 3A and Mark 3B coaches. The HST coaches had no buffers and used bar couplers. The Mark 3A coaches would include buffers and would be designed for non-HST usage, such as electric and diesel locomotives. They would be also implemented with motor alternators to convert loco power to AC for use in lights and aircon and etc. The HST and Mark 3A coaches were built around the same time, and the Mark 3B coach is actually dated from the late 80s and were constructed with newer Intercity 80 seats, whilst at the same time the driving van trailers were constructed from 1988, which allowed for push-pull formation, which negated the need for a second locomotive or time-consuming shunting. And although they were similar to the driving brake standard open carriage, which were built for the Mark 2s, which was like a cab at the end of the Mark 2s to allow for push-pull operation, the DVTs would be their own standard vehicle, with the Mark 3 DVT being constructed to work with Mark 2 and Mark 3 carriages, with 52 of these Mark 3 DVTs constructed. Now, they were built to look like the Class 90s and Class 91s, which they would work with alongside the West Coast Main Lines. These were built for West Coast Main Line operations. Overall, the Mark 3s, once they were fully constructed and rolled out into service, operated pretty much everywhere in the UK. Everywhere with a long distance, intercity, relatively high speed service. They were operating in the form of HST sets, they were operating in the form of normal locomotive usage, and they were operating in the form of the DVTs. Their main usage as HSTs, was everywhere, but the Great Western Main Line was where a lot of HSTs were concentrated. But of course, the West Coast Main Line, the East Coast Main Line, the Midland Main Line also all gained HSTs, and countless other routes which I haven't mentioned. The cross-country, intercity cross-country services as well used a lot of HSTs. And their usage nationwide didn't change with privatisation. The Mark 3s were taken on by Porterbrook and Angel trains upon privatisation and continued to be operated under HST operations and normal locomotive services. But this has dwindled. Hence the point of this video. Virgin Trains replaced theirs on the West Coast Main Line with Pendolinos. Virgin Cross Country and Cross Country replaced theirs with, well, nothing. Cross Country, Arriva Cross Country just replaced theirs with literally nothing, which was rather stupid. London North Eastern Railway replaced theirs with the IETs. Greater Anglia replaced their Mark 3 sets with the new Flirts. Transport for Wales replaced theirs with Mark 4s. Great Western Railway, the IET trains. Grand Central have got rid of theirs. Caledonia Sleeper have replaced theirs with new Mark 5 coaches, so on and so forth. I could go on. The amount of privatised operators which operated the Mark 3s was extensive. Today, that list is very short. In terms of passenger operations, as of recording, Chiltern Railways, of course, operate Mark 3 coaches. Great Western Railway operate night Riviera services. You can't really catch them in the day like a normal service, like the Chiltern ones. And ScotRail still have their HST sets. They are the last HSTs in the UK. And it means that the Mark 3s will live on after they leave Chiltern. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about the history of the Mark 3s. I'm going to get to this train up to Birmingham Wall Street in a little bit, the next Mark 3 set. I'll be getting this Mark 3 set, silver set, up to Birmingham, and there we will talk a little bit about how the Mark 3s got to Chiltern, and then a little bit about the operations with Chiltern. So let's go to Birmingham. Behind me then is one of the last Mark 3 DVTs still in service, and of course one of the last Mark 3 sets still in daily passenger service. In the whole of the UK it's just ScotRail, Chiltern and Great Western left. So yes, here I am inside the business zone, the ex-business zone of a Chiltern Railways Mark 3. Very peaceful, very quiet. The seats are very nice. And they recline as well. Hold on, let me... Alright, you get quite... Oh god, you get quite a bit of recline. So how did we get to a stage here where Chiltern operate these silver sets as they're known? Well, in 2006, John Lang and Renaissance Trains, John Lang, by the way, also owned Chiltern Railways at the time. They joined together to create an operator, Wrexham and Shropshire, an open access operator operating from Marylebone up the Chiltern Main Line towards Wrexham. And for these services, they used 4 sets of Mark III coaches, ex-Virgin Trains Mark III coaches, and Class 67 locomotives. And they were repainted into this very nice silver livery. They did get some internal refurbishments inside. Now, this Wrexham and Shropshire operator unfortunately wasn't that successful, and by December 2010 the company were reducing the services that they ran out of Marylebone. They ran several trains a day. They cut that to 2 or 3 services a day because the service just wasn't making money. And Chiltern, with their growing operations, decided that they were going to sort of nab one of these locomotive hauled sets that Wrexham and Shropshire weren't using now. So from December 2010, I believe they ran 2 peak hour services using 2 different loco hauled Class 67 sets. One of these was a Wrexham and Shropshire set, which ran up to Birmingham, and then another one of these sets was a hired Deutsche Bahn Mark III set. At the time, Deutsche Bahn had just purchased Chiltern Railways and Wrexham and Shropshire, so of course that was quite easy for them to do. So they ran 2 sets. One of them was a Wrexham and Shropshire, the other one was an ex-British Rail Mark III set, which I don't think had anything really different inside, and these were used for peak time services just to relieve congestion on the Chiltern Main Line. In January of 2011, Wrexham and Shropshire ceased operations altogether, and now there was a rake of 4 Mark III sets and Class 67s which were open for anybody to use, and Chiltern were the company which nabbed them. I guess it's quite easy to do when they're owned by the same parent company and they're already cleared to run on the Chiltern Main Line. 6 Class 67s would be brought in to run the service. They kept the same grey silver colour scheme. They added a little bit of Chiltern branding to it, but the exterior livery was basically the same, and it is sort of the same now. There's a little bit of Chiltern blue on it and Chiltern branding, but it is, I believe, the same Wrexham and Shropshire silver as previously. These new Chiltern sets would now operate several diagrams per day, including operating as far as Kidderminster, as Chiltern launched a new service up to Kidderminster. This was all part of the Project Evergreen Chiltern Railways upgrade, which was a huge upgrade to the Chiltern Main Line, enabling faster services, and the fastest peak time service from Birmingham to London was now 92 minutes, which is crazy fast and was just as quick as Virgin Trains on the West Coast. These silver sets, as they were dubbed to be known, would be the sort of equivalent to a Pendolino. These were going to be the luxury trains operating from Birmingham to London, but for half the price of a Virgin train service and just as quick. They did a huge refurbishment of the trains. The ex-Virgin Trains Mark IIIs were internally refurbished by Wrexham and Shropshire, but that didn't stop Chiltern Railways doing some refurbishments to the Mark IIIs in 2012. Probably the biggest upgrade to the Mark IIIs for Chiltern was the doors. Previously they were slam door units like any other loco hauled set, but Chiltern put in new plug doors. These were going to be sliding doors, and these greatly improved accessibility for everybody, including the elderly and wheelchair users. And accessibility was also helped by a new disabled PRM accessible toilet and more disabled access friendly seating here in the business zone section. All 25 Mark IIIs were refurbished by Wabtec in Doncaster, with the units receiving water retention tanks for the toilets. As well as this, the ends and the upper ends were completely rebuilt due to the new sliding plug door mechanism. This required a complete rebuild of the ends and the upper ends of the carriages. Some toilets were also removed, which allowed 8 extra seats to be added to the standard class carriages, whilst the vestibules were also enlarged to allow for luggage storage and to create a nicer ambience inside the train. Move myself into standard class here. Oh, one of the doors is shutting just because these are the original Intercity 70 seats. They do exist and they are comfy. So yes, the trains were fully refurbished. They got Wi-Fi. These were now basically as good as an offering as Virgin Trains provided on their service from New Street to Euston. Chiltern were now the new standard. Although the Class 67 locomotives, at least according to Chiltern, were not up to standard. They were getting too old, too expensive to run, and were not as powerful as a new contender on the market, the Class 68s. The Class 67s, yes, although they were only around 14, 15 years old, at the time in 2014. They were, however, quite unreliable. They were costly to maintain and they were costly to lease. So Chiltern took the decision to take on 5 Class 68s from Direct Rail Services. These were the new Stadler Vaslo locomotives, capable of much more power, much quicker acceleration. They were going to be more reliable and they were going to be cheaper, and they would also be easier to maintain. All the maintenance would be done by Direct Rail Services in Crewe, and that would all be done on a contract with Direct Rail Services. 5 68s, 68010 up to 68015 would be leased and would be painted in the Chiltern Railways grey and silver colours, whilst another 2 Class 68, 68008 and 68009 would also be capable of running with the Mark 3s. All 7 of these 68s were fitted with AAR push-pull equipment, and they are notorious for their incredible sound. I'm not a person who cares if a train sounds good, but yeah, these trains, they do sound incredible. And I mean, I can already hear it idling now. They're just so loud. Now, the first 68 arrived in the country in January of 2014 and commenced in operations for Chiltern in late 2014, with the last of the 67s being replaced in around 2015. The first Class 68s rolled out in December of 2014. And that is sort of where things have been since 2014. And we've had about 12 years now of pretty regular Mark III service. But yeah, they operate a few services a day between Birmingham and London, and from Stourbridge as well. Things have dwindled down, of course, in the last few years. Things have also changed since December 2025 timetable change. There are now 2 morning services from Birmingham to London, timed at I think 6:14 and 8:14 from Birmingham, around 6:15 and 8:15. They don't run the peak time 7:15 and 6:45 services anymore. They've been replaced by standard 168s and 165s. They've also changed the Stourbridge services. They still run 2 services in the peaks back to Stourbridge, but their timings have been tweaked. They run less services on Saturdays and Sundays. That's the big downgrade. If you want to get a 68 Mark III set for Chiltern, do it on a weekday, because on Saturdays and Sundays they only run very few services. And this has all been in preparation for their replacement. We will talk about their replacements at the next station. I'm not sure where I'm going to take this set to. So yes, I'm going to take this Mark III set probably to maybe Warwick or Warwick Parkway, and then I will probably leave you for a bit after we talk about the Mark III's replacement, and then I will rejoin you back at around 6 o'clock tonight for the train up to Stourbridge Junction. I want to get a Mark III set up to Stourbridge for the last time, all the way as far as they go. But yeah, these are brilliant trains. I love the Mark III sets. With Chiltern, I think they have really revolutionised travel. And of course, for a while now, it's sort of been winding down. We'll talk more about their latter history at Warwick or Warwick Parkway. But yeah, I think it's time to get on board and go to our next station down the line to talk more about the later history and replacements of these great Mark III sets.
If you see something that doesn't look right, speak to British Transport Police on 61016.
So yes, you join me here at Warwick Parkway. I thought because Warwick Parkway is quite easy to film at versus Warwick. So yes, the Mark 3s have been refurbished in 2012 and they got a new locomotive in the form of the Class 68s from December of 2014. After this, not a lot has happened really. First class catering was removed from business zone and across the whole train in 2017, and the old catering cafe car has been boarded up, but it's still there to this day. I guess they could have completely removed it and put in like seats and stuff, but they chose not to do that. So the old cafe car is still there. New screens have been installed, which are actually really useful. They have all the live updates of the journey as well as like the local news and things. So they're quite nice and they've been installed in each carriage. Business zone has also been declassified since COVID due to a lack of people wanting to use the business zone product. So I was sitting in the old business zone carriage there, but it's all standard class now. Sometimes they are set swapped, actually quite frequently they are now being set swapped. And in the coming weeks and months, those diagrams will be slowly replaced by the new Mark 5As, which I'm really looking forward to. Talk about Mark 5As, let's talk a little bit about their introduction. Now I'm going to make a whole video on the Mark 5As when they're introduced, and we can talk more then about these new trains. But in December 2023, the Mark 5As, which are brand new trains, they were introduced in I believe 2017 or 2018 for Transpennine Express, they were withdrawn from TP services, only being 6 years old due to cost-cutting measures that the Department for Transport was enforcing on Transpennine. Noise complaints from locals, especially around Scarborough. The Class 68s were very noisy locomotives which ran with the Mark 5As. And they were also unreliable. Cracks were found in them, and they're built by CAF. They weren't the most reliable of carriages. Now, Modern Railways first reported in September 2023 that these units could leave Transpennine and then join Chiltern, because Chiltern were looking for replacements for their Mark 3s, and it makes sense to replace local haul trains with another set of local haul trains. Just makes things easier, especially as the Mark 3s and Mark 5As are both hauled by Class 68 locomotives, so that would negate the need for new facilities to be introduced or a load of driver training to be needed. In January 2024, Chiltern put a tender out for between 25 and 70 new or existing vehicles to replace the Mark 3 sets. And by November 2024, Chiltern had put forward a business case for the introduction of the Mark 5As from warm storage onto Chiltern services. There were two business cases. One of these was just for like-for-like replacement, so there would have only been 6 Mark 5A sets which were brought out for Chiltern services. And then there was another business case for all of the Mark 5As to be moved to Chiltern and allow for an overall increase in the amount of carriages that Chiltern had. Obviously this one, shut up. Obviously this second option was the preferred one, especially because it means that there's more carriages overall for Chiltern. In February 2025, Chiltern's team went over to Long Marston, I believe, in Warwickshire, it's not very far away. They went over to Long Marston to have a look at the Mark 5As, to inspect them, and to basically be sold by Beacon Rail, who own the trains, to be sold the product, and to confirm that this is really what Chiltern wanted. And then by August they signed a £350 million contract with Beacon Rail for 13 Mark 5A sets, 13 5-car sets, and 12 Class 68 locomotives. So there will be 12 5-car Mark 5A sets which are able to run. Well, obviously they probably won't run every day. I think there's probably only going to be maybe 7, 8, 9 per day running. But yeah, there will be up to 12 which will be able and capable to run. But yeah, the Mark 5As will initially directly replace the Mark 3 sets within March, the date given for the last Mark 3 services. We don't actually know exactly when. I'll try to get a figure, but I'm not entirely sure when the last Mark 3 service will run for Chiltern. I don't even think Chiltern know at this point. They need to work out how good the Mark 5As are in terms of reliability and how quickly they can get out the Mark 5A sets. With the Mark 5As only being 5 carriages, they are only going to be running less peak time services. In December 2025, the diagrams for the silver sets were changed. They basically moved a lot of the services off of peak time, off of the busiest peak time services from Birmingham to London and London to Birmingham, mostly because the Mark 5As are going to be a slight reduce in overall capacity compared to the Mark 3 set, a like-for-like 5 carriage to 6 carriage Mark 5A versus Mark 3. The Mark 3 has more seats. So it makes sense to move the Mark 5As onto less peak time services when they're introduced. But overall, with the 13 sets which are coming in, there will be a lot more capacity, and this will actually be hugely beneficial for Chiltern. I'll hopefully talk more about this in my dedicated Mark 5A video, but basically Chiltern will be able to completely overhaul the December 2026 timetable, and we can hopefully see a lot of the Mark 5As on the Birmingham line. Every Birmingham service bar peak time services will hopefully be Mark 5As, and that will enable a huge capacity increase. At the moment, most services off peak are around 4 carriages long, but now we are going to see 5 carriage Mark 5A services throughout the day, Monday to Friday and Saturday and Sunday, half hourly on weekdays and hopefully on Saturdays as well, although I'm not too sure on the weekend timetable just yet. One thing about the Mark 5As is that they will be reintroducing first class, so first class will be coming back to the Chiltern network or business zone. I'm not sure if it's going to be I think it will just be called first class at this point. The interiors of the Mark 5As, I believe, are basically the same as the TransPennine ones. They haven't done much. It helps that TP's colour scheme is actually quite close to Chiltern's. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Mark 5As being introduced, although I will really miss the Mark 3s. They really are, personally for me, units and sets that I really like. Out with the old and in with the new. It is due. They're due a replacement. As much as the Mark 3s are nice, they are old, they are outdated, they're over 50 years old. Corrosion works and repair works and whatnot will just keep on ramping up. Spare parts will get lower and lower. They're already low on availability, hence why not every set is 6 carriages. So I think this will be a good move, even if it is a sad one to see the Mark 3s go. There is a Mark 3 farewell tour on the 22nd of February 2026, and when the last set runs, that will be the last day-to-day operation of a Mark 3 set in England. So these are the last Mark 3s in England, basically, bar the Night Riviera, which is sort of like a big asterisk because you sort of have to book beforehand. It's a sleeper service. It's completely different to a normal train service, but it's worth it for the 10,000 extra seats which are going to be coming in December 2026. More on that in my Mark 5A video coming in the next few weeks. Here at Warwick Parkway then, my train back to Birmingham is going to be arriving in about 10-15 minutes. Not a Mark 3 set. Although this is not the end of the video. This is the end of my history of the Mark 3s, but I will be catching a late night service up to Stourbridge, which may be my last ever Mark 3 ride. But yeah, next time you see me, it will be at Leamington Spa at about 6 o'clock at night. We'll be getting a train up to Stourbridge. Right, hello, you join me at a dark Leamington Spa station. It is obviously much later in the day now. I've been out and about doing my own stuff in and around Birmingham, but yes, in this video we've looked at the history of the Mark 3s, what made them so famous and what made them so great for Britain's rail network. We've looked at their operations with Chiltern Railways, how they got to Chiltern Railways, and now their demise, their replacements with the Mark 5As imminently in the next few months. So for me, I'm going to end this video with one final silver set Mark 3 Chiltern ride up all the way to Stourbridge Junction, the very northernmost point that Chiltern Railways operate to, all the way to Stourbridge on a silver set. There is 82305 behind me. Took it up from Leamington to here at Stourbridge. I think we arrived about 10 minutes late. We got held at Birmingham Snow Hill, and I've had to rush over here to platform, I don't even know what platform 2, to ensure I don't miss the train back to Birmingham that I need to catch. But yes, that is it. Potentially my final ever Chiltern Railways Mark 3 journey, and the last Mark 3s in operation in England on daily passenger operations, not sleeper services. So yes, that is that for this video, and that might be that for the Mark 3s as well by the time you're watching this video. If you're watching it after mid to late March, these would probably be gone from service. And well, I hope that maybe they could go into preservation somewhere, but chances are they'll probably be scrapped. And yeah, I will miss them very dearly. But yeah, thanks very much for watching this video. Thanks to all my YouTube and Patreon members. You'll be getting your shout out shortly. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learnt something new. So once again, thanks for watching. Check out my Discord, Twitter and Blue Sky in the links in the description below. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. And of course, a huge thank you to my YouTube and Patreon members, including my first class members, Aaron Barry, Crispin McKee, JBNEL and Phil Smith. My business owned members, Andrew Bowen, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Connor Gregg, Clive's Travelling Trains, Daniel Burford, Dave CDF, JTecho, Gallialev, Lewis C21, NJTE, Ollie G, OVTUG Alex, Real, SZWL, That Transport Girl, Train Life GB, Tom Kennedy, Welsh Train Enthusiast, Will Ho and Zach Renfrey, as well as my standard premium and standard class members. I really appreciate your support and you help to make these videos possible. Thank you. Once again, thanks for watching. Check out my Discord server, Twitter and Blue Sky in the links in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.